710 KEEL is your news and weather station.
We had former Mayor Cedric Glover in the studio, and we talked for a while about this the GM plant, the vacant GM plant, and how close or not so close we came to getting Land Rover in there, that they were interested, and he told his story, and so today we are having Caddo Commissioner John Escude. Morning, Mr. John. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So are you, without running through everything once again, are you relatively familiar with what former Mayor Glover had to say yesterday or in a couple of other venues?
Well, I listened to what he had to say yesterday, yes.
Where is he off base?
Well, it's not that he's off base. I think here's the problem. When you're not in the room, when the details are being discussed, and you have to get your information from third parties or unidentified sources or secondary sources, a lot of times the story gets convoluted. And in a project this big, there are so many moving parts to it that it can get confusing. Actually, I was involved in many of those negotiations. I serve as the chairman of the Economic Development Committee for the parish, so I'm kind of familiar with what went on.
So where was Mayor Glover wrong?
Well, what I think you have to do is put it in perspective. First of all, IRG approached Land Rover. You know, the automobile industry is a very tight circle from what I understand.
I.e. IRG
is Stuart
Lichter.
Yes, the management, they held the master lease on the General Motors property. They approached them actually doing headhunting, and that's what you do for economic development. You've got to go out there on the water and throw your line in the water, and you try to catch a fish, and many times there's nothing on the hook, and when you get one, you try to hook them. So they were prospecting. So was the state of Georgia. The governor of Georgia actually went to the UK to get them to try to locate Land Rover in a shuttered GM plant. And Land Rover looked at the plant a couple of times. They looked at the facility, and then it was turned over to LED, Secretary Morey, because that's what they do.
I.e. the state of Louisiana.
The state of Louisiana, because when you're talking about a project this big, there's all kinds of incentives and things that they want. The state is able to do that. It was turned over to them.
When you mean, pardon me, when you say turned over, does that mean that the state sort of was flying the boat at that point and not Mr. Lichter?
No, I'm not necessarily saying that, but you let the state lead in those negotiations because they partner with all the local governmental entities involved, NLEP, Scott Martin. They pull everybody together to because it's a huge package when you're talking about something like this. And they have the mechanism, the infrastructure, and the know-how to do that. So, they were kind of leading the ball on this thing.
Let me ask you this, John. John Escude, he's on the Caddo Parish Commission. So Stuart Lichter had to be at that table, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, for him to say in media reports that he only met with a marketing person from Land Rover and really wasn't in on negotiations, is that off base a little?
Well, I have no idea about who he met with and when all he met with, so I really can't speak to that.
But you were at a table with him, I'm sure, discussing this.
Actually, my meetings were with the Land Rover representatives.
Okay.
Now, I know for a fact that Mr. Lichter met with not Scott Martinez, but Secretary Morey at LED in Baton Rouge, and they were discussing the matter. That I know because, I wasn't in the room, but I was on that trip. What I do know is this, that subsequently Land Rover was considering several sites. Word got out, so everybody pursued them. In the interim, after about a 5-week period of time, Land Rover decided, and I read you a copy of an article from Auto News Daily. They finally interviewed the president of Land Rover, that for several reasons they decided that they were going to just put it all on hold and wait 3 years before they even looked for a site in the U.S. And they cited 3 reasons, and I think they're pretty significant. One of them is they just opened a plant in China and Brazil and a new facility in the UK, and he said their hands were full. They had more than they could do. Secondly, Land Rover will require processed aluminum like in the Ford F-150 that they're moving towards. The industry in this country, the steel industry, is not set up to supply what they need now at this current time, so that's got to evolve. But more importantly, if you read the article, and this is a quote by the president and CEO of Land Rover, their sales are less than half of what they need them to be to justify a plant here. So they never made an offer or a firm, commitment to come here. So the details and money was never discussed. And I know that because they never sent their engineers down here to look in that facility to see what part of it they could use, what machinery they wanted to purchase, and all. And you have to know all these things before you can start negotiating a price.
So it was real early.
We were prospecting, taking a shot real early. They decided they needed to postpone their plans, obviously for legitimate business reasons, not to be foolish. And so, okay, so we took a shot.
Can you hang on with us? Can you stay
Oh,
in?
absolutely.
Okay.
When former Mayor Glover was here yesterday, he, I would think, more than implied that the reason that the deal for Land Rover to not take over the GM plant was because, I think what Mayor Glover was saying was that the reason that deal didn't happen was because it did not benefit Stuart Lichtner. What do you think?
I have no idea. I couldn't speak to that. The only people would know that would be Land Rover, Stuart Lichtner, or former Secretary Moray. So that's just an assumption. And, that's bad. I understand that the people of this parish, and we want to create some really good jobs. We want them bad. We're so hungry for them. And I think more of a positive approach, a team approach, rather than sitting back and condemning and criticizing everybody's efforts, we need to get together and send a positive message. How does this look from people to the outside looking here saying, they can't even get along. They can't even work on the same thing together. They're always second-guessing one another. Personally, I don't care who gets the credit when jobs are made. I just want the jobs.
Mayor Glover also said that the deal that Caddo Parish did with Mr. Lichtner is a horrible, horrible deal, that giving him what the mayor said is final say-so over anything that happens with the GM plant.
Well, you have to realize that, that's an opinion. I mean, what the parish did when it bought the property was it bought it for one main reason. We didn't want it razed like other GM plants and 4 million square feet of concrete without the carrot there to attract business and industry. So we knew that if we could buy it and buy it right, which we did, cheap, that we could control it. But we also knew we're not property managers, nor are we economic developers. We partnered with the most successful entity in this country of repurposing shuttered automobile and military plants to date. All you got to do is look that up. So, it's all subjective and it's all a risk, but we chose what we thought was the best partner. Now, here's the thing. If you ever read the purchase agreement, the option was in there. We never wanted to buy it in the first place. We preferred IRG just to buy it, and we help facilitate it. They have the option to pay the parish $7.5 million and buy it and walk away from and own it anytime they want.
People don't realize that. People don't realize. Say that again. That's important.
IRG has the option to write the parish a check for $7.5 million and own that property anytime it wants.
Does Mr. Lichtner and his people? Lichtner. I'm sorry. Do they have the final say-so over what happens to that building?
Yes, they hold the master lease. Okay, so they're incentivized in that lease to get numbers of jobs and quality jobs in there to get tax credits for it. That's their motivation. They have. And I will tell you this, they've had a couple of prospects, not real huge things, but significant things that they have brought, and they've run it through the parish. They said, what do you think about this? And if it's more retail, service sector jobs, and a couple of these things where we go, that's not what we need. We have plenty of those. Let's wait for a bigger, better opportunity. Not that, we don't appreciate any jobs, but we need better jobs.
So I guess what Mayor Glover was saying is that Land Rover wanted to buy the GM building, and that his point was that the sale of the building wouldn't benefit Mr. Lichtner.
There's no N.
Thank you. And that was why he KO'd the deal.
I have no idea whether Land Rover wanted to buy the building or not. You'd have to ask Land Rover.
That never came up in the meetings you were in.
Absolutely not.
It was too early.
It was way too early. Like I said, they didn't even send their engineers down to see what part of the 2002 expansion that they would need. And if you've ever been in there, that place is pristine. It is ready, within 9 months, can be ready to produce almost any automobile. It is a $1 billion jewel sitting there for the right person. But they didn't even get to the point to see what it was they were going to need, how much of it, to even get into those discussions, because they changed their plans and put it all on hold because they don't have the market share that they need at this particular time. That's one of the reasons.
What's the outlook right now for the GM plant over the next, say, 3, 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years?
Okay, keeping in mind that the parish only has had the property since May of last year. It's only been a year. Keeping in mind that $7 million that the parish spent $7.5 million. We're getting 4% return on our money. We were getting less than 1% prior to that. That money was in a specific fund. So we're getting 4% return in lease payments, which will escalate to $65,000 in July, which is 8% return. So even though there's nothing going on, we're getting our money back. Plus we own the land. Plus we own the building. Plus we own the minerals, which are unleased. 400 plus acres, right in the middle of the Haynesville Shale. So it's definitely, an asset. What I do know, and I really can't speak in details, is, as Aaron mentioned, we have a couple of whales, the hooks in them, but you've got to bring them in slow. And these are Fortune 500 companies, and they do things in their time. They have the money. They call the shots. And all you have to do is make one wrong move or leak it out to the public or say one thing, and they can go anywhere they want to go.
Would your first option be to sell the facility or to lease the facility?
I think under the right circumstances that all of those options are on the table. The parish never wanted to really be in the real estate holding business, but what we wanted was to know that we could gain control of that asset and have it here as a carrot. And by the way, consequently, the plant in Georgia that Land Rover was looking at, they're razzing it right now. It was an older plant. Once that happens, this will be, as I'm told, the only state-of-the-art, modern, vacant automobile manufacturing site this size left in this country. What an advantage is that to us? And like I said, in 9 to 10 months, with some engineering fixes, it could be ready to go.
In your opinion, is Land Rover a dead issue or no?
Land Rover, according to their CEO, said, they're going to wait 3 years to even start looking for sites again. They've put everything on hold based on the conditions we discussed prior. So I would have to say it's dead for now. They're not doing anything anywhere.
If this is or will soon be the only facility of its type in the country, why is it empty?
Well, first of all, the economy is just getting cranked up, and these guys are willing to, starting to release their capital and all. But I want to tell you two interesting things that I noticed yesterday, and I kind of want to comment on. We're getting a return on our money, and, rather than local market the property locally, we put it into the hands of people, IRG, who have a history of success in repurposing automobile factories and military bases. The AT&T plant was mentioned yesterday. Well, it's been closed for 30 years. We've tried to market it with local people for 30 years. How's that worked out for us? Let's try something a little bit different, And another question I heard asked was, is there room, and I think you asked the question, for more than one automobile manufacturer at that facility? The answer is yes. And also, I'm here to tell you it's very possible.
Okay. One more thing, John, real quick. We got to go. Is Elio now a pipe dream? Will Elio ever happen?
I don't know about Elio Motors. It has nothing to do with the parish's position. We just wanted to control the property. The only Elio involvement is the fact that the Racer Trust, the government, when they agreed to sell the parish the property,
Racer Trust, pardon me, is the federal government.
The division of the U.S. Treasury that held the GM toxic, they told us, you can buy the property, but you have to reserve X amount of space, I think $1.2 million for Elio Motors for 18 months to give them time to get their act together. If not, then you can do whatever you want to do with it.
When's that 18 months up?
We took possession in May, so you run the calendar. So, probably toward the end of this year, early next year. Mm-hmm. But that was a condition the government put on us, and we wasn't going to break the deal just because of that. We said, okay, fine. We still got 3 million square feet we can actively pursue.
John Escude, can't thank you enough for coming in and shining some more light on it. We appreciate your
John,
time.
Pleasure, as always, good to see you. Robert J. Wright and Aaron McCarty.